beats a zero.
We make everything look good, including being overweight. So, scientifically, you cannot drink alkaline water and it makes your cells alkalytic.
The closer you are to nature, the healthier you'll be. Anything beats a zero.
We make everything.
All right, and happy Saturday, everyone. You are in the Mind of Nature, hosted by Dr. Zarif, the nutritionist. We are doing a pre-recording today, but you can go ahead and drop your comments, and we will go ahead and do our best to answer them. So thank you all so much for joining us here this morning. We are going to be talking about a few topics. First up is African civilization, kings and queens, and value education, discipline, and personal growth. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Continue to do the things as if we were here because we are. Drop the comments, likes, shares, and all those things because we really do appreciate it and it does go a long way. So thank you all so much for being here. Dr. Zarif, go ahead and join me here on stage so we can get started.
And
Grand rising to you.
Grand Rising to you also. Today we have a wonderful, family. So, we definitely, we don't take it for granted, but we want you to know that this is a special day. We have Dr. James in the house. Yeah. Hey, where's my applause? Let me see. Where's it? What's that? All right, there it is. Yeah. Okay, so that's the way to start it off. Thank you for being here, Dr. James. Today we're going to have This Should Be Good. This is something that we don't even need notes for, because we're so used to it. And this is just great. How you feeling first? Let's get it on.
Feeling great. It's good
That's
to be here. It's good to be thriving.
That is very, very true. And it's a really big difference between thriving and struggling. It's the difference between struggling and survival, desperation, and those types of emotions that go along with making the wrong choices when you're eating. I truly don't feel that anybody have the nerve to call ourselves kings and queens and we're eating like paupers. That just doesn't make any sense. We're eating like we're out begging in the streets and we don't have any other choices. What is that about? What do you think about that, Dr. James?
Yeah, I agree. We do have some choices to make every day that either we're going to consume something that contributes to our health or in a way that we can thrive or just sustains us or sometimes detracts from our health.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad we're going to dive into that from a more historical perspective. And interesting, the thing about kings and queens, there is a paradox. If you look at uh, especially the European kings and queens, they weren't the healthiest group, right? Because they had, the king's meal was typically, a whole lot of meat and, wine and all that stuff. And, we can talk more about wine or, the positive and negatives. But the basic thing is those people out in the field that were doing the agriculture and harvesting, they were actually healthier than those kings and queens. But I think if you go to the matrix, you go to Africa, I think there's a disparity there in a positive sense. Because, a lot of times when we talk about disparities, we're talking about black people being on the downside of health and for a number of reasons. But when you look at the disparity in terms of kings and queens, I think you see a healthier, especially look at Egyptian history, you see a healthier lot of people because they're eating healthier food. And so anyway, we can jump into a lot of that as we go on.
Yeah, that's very true because I've looked at the hieroglyphics and I'm like, everybody's in shape, you know. But I looked also back in 1939, 1940s, that black people were, everybody was slender. Everybody was slender. The only ones that weren't so slender were like the cooks. the people that were cooking for the owners, and they were in the kitchen all day. And I know some people draw that picture as like, a house servant and field servants, and this, but either one, house servants work their behinds off, and it's the same thing with people out in the field. But yeah, I'm sure we're going to go into that a little also. I wanted to ask Carolyn, you know being a woman, or well, no, let's take it another. I want it differently. Like, you're from Belize, and there are some things that people, that Belizeans really, really like, and I just, I know this is maybe it's elementary, but it's like when I look at, for instance, I met one of the ladies that was a candidate for Miss Belize. It was a pageant, and one of the things that she got down on, I think it's still on YouTube. She was getting down on oxtails. I mean, this was a lady fine as fine gets. I mean, this just beautiful. And then she was eating this pile of just oxtails, and she had other stuff in there. But do you think that there's really, when we talk about eating and the connection with eating and success, for some reason I feel that there is something happening there. When I used to compete in martial arts, one of the things that I used to tell myself in the locker room, I was just warming up, and then I get a little light on the bag and stuff, getting ready for the day, as it said, as it's called. And I remember I used to say, this dude eats pork. Ain't no way in the hell I'm gonna allow him to beat me. I used to always think that you eating pork, and man, you eating, and then all that other slush that they throw down their bodies. One more thing is football games. When we used to play football, this is in high school. One of the things that I never could understand, be a day before you we played our games, our coach would used to take us out for a big steak dinner, a huge steak dinner. Now maybe that's you know, I was like, what? Why are we eating this heavy food? We're not going to even be able to move. But we ate it, and guess what? It was a lot of times, we sometimes we won, so maybe that's our talent. Maybe it's not, but I used to trip on that. So sorry, I know you got a lot of stuff, a lot of questions now. So pick whatever you like and talk about it, please.
I mean, you mentioned the way you eat being linked to success. And I don't know if I would necessarily link the way someone eats to success, because you'll have, people who are millionaires and they'll still run to McDonald's, and that's just something that they like to do. That's something, maybe they just love McDonald's tea. I know there's some people who just can't get enough of McDonald's iced tea, and it's just. So, and I've seen it before. So um, success, no. Nostalgia, like you've always mentioned, yes. I definitely think that that is something that is linked. That makes them continue to do that thing, which is eat in a certain way that they used to eat before success or any money came into play. So, yeah, that's my
Uh,
thought on that.
Dr. James, you want to add on to that?
Well, I think, yeah, that there are connections between health, good health, and success. Just because you have more options, you have more opportunities, you have more resources. But I think the reason why you'll see sometimes a separation is is your orientation, your education. And even though people that have a lot more money have often more access to schools and education, sometimes that traditional thing that Carolyn talks about, that cultural thing, kind of supersedes. And so they still eat some of the foods that traditionally they eat or culturally they eat that may or may not be contributing to good health. But a lot of it, we often break these things down to genetics and environment, right? And we've learned that genetics play a small role compared to environment. And so the environment for example, you can take in most major cities, you can tell where people are not as healthy just by their zip codes.
Mm.
And zip codes it's an objective description of the environment, right? So you go in certain, like I grew up in Chicago, you go in certain zip codes, and like Inglewood area where I went to high school in Inglewood area
Mhm.
in Chicago, and the average um, lifespan there is 65, whereas just a few miles to what we call the Gold Coast, a more upscale area financially in Chicago, the average age length there is 85. So
Wow.
why, so why is that, right? And so and they're multifactorial answers. People talk about all the time about the social determinants of health, but it goes beyond that. There's also when you look at ethnic groups, there's that stress level, and that's unique in some ways. And what we've learned in the last 20 years is it can be passed on from one generation to the next because of this term called epigenetics, how our chromosomes are read and transcribed into proteins and enzymes are impacted by stress. And so we have the nutrition stress in our, which is environmental. What do we have? What options do we have at grocery stores and things like that? We have cultural stress, the slave food that we're used to having.
Yeah.
you know, and then we have the other stresses, the environmental stress, unsafe environments. We have the stress of microaggressions. It's a lot that adds up. But one thing for sure, it's not good because we have deficient genes. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's we should definitely get into the gene pool too, because I'm sure there's a lot of when I think about the gene pool, I also think about the biochemical individuality that sometimes we're not taking into account, and we have so many. Man, it just gets back to me. It's just, why do people eat the way that they eat, despite knowing better? That's that's the key. So, let me take a shot at this. The people often they eat unhelpful or unhealthy foods that, despite knowing better, because of the food choices that's influenced by much more than knowledge alone, because you have professors, you have doctors, you have judges, you have people from all walks of life that can fit in this category, knowing better, but doing still eating just foods that are very unhealthy despite knowing better. But the taste preferences, the habits formed, the habits that are formed during childhood, emotional stress, like you were speaking of, Dr. James, about the different types of stress, and the convenience, the cost, the advertising, the social influences, and the food availability all play powerful roles in daily eating decisions. The highly processed foods are specially designed to be appealing and convenient and rewarding, and making them difficult to resist. Even when people understand their health risk, they'll still eat this stuff. They'll still drink stuff that they know better. But again, in addition, many people face barriers that make healthy eating challenging. And healthy eating challenging can be, again, connected directly to our belief systems. The superstition, the some of the religion, even. So it becomes more complex. There, some of the many of the people actually face the barriers that make healthy eating challenging, because they have like busy schedules, maybe fatigue, limiting cooking skills, a lack of. We were talking about that, Dr. James, just before we started. Some of the things that we've heard over the years. The reason that I eat this way is because, and fill in the blanks. Well, things like again, this the busy thing. You hear that a lot. Man, I'm too busy for that. Man, I just go and pick it up at the the uh, food a restaurant. I'm thinking about the fast food restaurants, and they or the food trucks. They might say they don't have any cooking skills, the lack of excess fresh foods, financial constraints, and emotional eating can also contribute to unhealthy choices. So it's all connected. Human behavior is often driven by immediate rewards. And if people knew, or if people could see what is happening with their body, for instance, if you take a bite of banana, you can't say, "Oh, I feel the potassium. Man, this is really good. I feel it going to work," or "I feel the fiber working for it." Our bodies aren't built like that, and it often involves creating healthier habits when you assert discipline, when you think about what you're putting into your body, when you are making sense out of the meal that you've selected. It has some kind of purpose instead of just filling up your belly. There are other things like energy, things like sleeping better, things like healing better, and so forth. So um, that's a. You guys got anything to add to that?
Well, I think that was great. I think you made me think of mindfulness when you were saying about, people not
Oh yeah.
the nutrients, and as they're eating, a lot of times we're eating while we're watching TV, we're eating while we're looking at our cell phones, senseless, just eating, right? And you're
Yes.
getting that reward you're talking about, because I agree with you fully. We're kind of driven by that immediate reward in terms of what drives behavior now. So that sugar fix, that salt fix, that fat fix, the SOS they call it,
Yes.
that's how these food engineers trap us because they're not trying to kill us. They don't want to kill off their profits, right? But they're not concerned about our health. They're concerned about their bottom line. And by getting us hooked on these fast foods, these junk foods that we end up liking for that immediate, that immediate reward, that makes them rich and it makes us unhealthy. And
That's right.
so, I like the way you put that because that's something that, 2 or 3 times a day we're making these choices. And unfortunately, I mean, if you look at the standard American diet, almost 2/3 of it is highly processed food or processed food to some extent. And so it's a vicious cycle. We get that risk reward. We get that reward from the surge in the sugar, or then that special combination that gives us that bliss from the fat, salt, and sugar, and then we want more and more and more of it, and we get less, and we get sicker and sicker and sicker. And it's not just an African American thing; it's really an American thing and a Western thing, right?
That is true.
But
Yes.
but it affects us disproportionately.
Yes.
That brings us back to the crux of this hour, and that circles back to slave food and the fact that we disproportionately eat this stuff. You go into our communities, yeah, we see the McDonald's that Carolyn was talking about,
Mhm.
and as you said, Dr. Z, even though we know these things, they in Chicago they put Whole Foods and they discounted and put some coupons that people could use in areas like Inglewood I mentioned earlier. And do
Mhm.
you know what? Many of the people in the community still went to McDonald's and Popeyes, Church's
Yeah.
Chicken. They went to these, even though because they remember they call them food deserts.
Yes.
Well, an answer to food desert, okay, put healthy food in the community. But the people in the community still did not choose the healthy food, even with discounts. So what does that tell you, right? I mean, it's more to it than even accessibility. There's an educational part. There's an orientation part. It's not just the knowledge that, okay, drinking juice or eating produce is healthier. It's understanding that. that there's an understanding that's still missing, that it's more important to choose the healthy fruit because your grandmother died at 50 from a heart attack or stroke, or your uncle that died from prostate cancer at age 45. The reasons for that, in part, we're making these food choices.
In talking about food choices, look at this. What in the
What is that?
what is that? Yeah, that I mean, this
Yeah.
is just this is what some people consider. These are the parts of the pig that the owners did not eat. They would throw it away, and it would be something that is trash. It was just trash, and later on, this trash looks like a meal when you're starving. When you're starving, it's not just when you're hungry. When you're hungry, I mean, hungry to me is like a feeling that you have, knowing that you have some choices. You're hungry, you're looking for it. But when you are starving, this is a matter of life and death, not a matter of carbohydrates or protein. We're fortunate, those of us that eat at home, especially we have a family and we have like a cabinet or a pantry that we can choose from. But this stuff right here, this is trash. Things like hog moths, chitlins, things that people eat, and then we look like this when we're celebrating. We have fun, we look great, we're beautiful people. But what happens is that um, over time, we end up getting these chronic diseases, and we lead in the fatalities. We lead, and that's nothing to be proud about. We're number one as far as heart health, especially for Black men, and that's just nothing to be really proud about at all. Here are some of these seasonings that we had to season we could make these out in the garden, and some of the plantations had areas where the slaves were given like a little, I wouldn't even say a plot, but just like a spot, not a plot of soil, and they would nurture that soil and plant foods on that particular plantation. And this was later on down the road, because when we first got over here, we ate from a what is that called, a trough, or where the pigs eat from and the horses eat from. Uh, uh, I think I forgot the name of it, but it's uh, the not a plate or a bowl, but we ate out the same things that the animals ate out of. So we've come a whole long, long ways, and spoons and forks and all that, that we have now. It was, did you know that a one big bowl would be, they made this kind of makeshift dipping spoon that would go into the water, and then there was the water boy, or the whoever was serving the water. That same amount of water, that water that was dipped in with that spoon or a coconut or something to hold the water, they used the same one for the entire plantation, or those that were on giant plantations. They would use one bowl, or one. There wasn't any cups there, but they would use this one object to feed everybody, to satisfy everybody's thirst. And it wasn't anything like, now I ain't put my lips on after that. I'm not following, I'm not going to drink after that person. No, I'm not going to eat after that person. Because things were the way that we eat now is we eat like kings and queens, and that was a great point that Dr. James, that you made about, yeah, the gluttony, that came along with most kings and queens, because they were like eating, just ripping off, a leg off the turkey, or a leg off of some other animal, and pigs were a big part of that diet back then. Okay, so one of the things that I want to get back to, I'll probably get a little off because is sometimes getting so passionate about it, but one of the things that I think that is personally important, to me at least, that Black people have the access to choose healthier foods, because many of the Black communities, as Dr. James said, experience the disproportionately high rates of preventable health, and that's the uh, preventable health conditions, like I'm talking about obesity and high blood pressure, um, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes. All of these come in a package, it seems, because one leads to another. We're still not getting the exams that we need. We're still not being proactive. Good nutrition can play a significant role in reducing these risks, and improving the quality of life, increasing longevity, and helping people to maintain their strength and mobility and independence. Now, encouraging healthier eating is not about criticizing culture or traditions. It's about supporting individuals, families, the communities that we're in. We also are divided by tribes. We're divided by sectors. We're divided by culture. We're divided by religion. So there's a lot of complexities when it comes to what are and who are Black people. But again, back to Dr. James, which made a great point, it's not just about Black people. We're talking about people. It's important to recognize that health outcomes are influenced by many factors, and that's beyond some of our personal choices, including the access to affordable, healthy food, health care, education, income, stress, and community resources. A productive discussion like we're having today, it actually centers on improving health and the opportunities, rather than attributing the traits or the behaviors to an entire group, right? Just saying this is the way that Black people eat. This is the way that people eat. And again, if it's something that if they're appeased by the taste, and they look forward to the satiety of eating certain foods, this is what we have to look into, perhaps to help us take more control, manage what we're eating better. Okay, we'll go back to care. Well, let me go back to Dr. James, and Dr. James for remarks, and then care.
Well, I was thinking as you were talking that well, a question came to my mind as you were speaking, and one is you asked the question. Well, given the slave food, the scraps, and a lot of the foods that you showed minutes ago on the slides, how did we survive that? Right? Doesn't that question come to mind? How did we survive eating scraps? And how do we survive that tremendous stress of slavery? We know we survived it, right? So, but how? And given what we've said about nutrition and choices and things like that, slaves didn't have choices. So, interestingly, when you look at then compared to now, although they had the scraps of meat, and they also had nutritious food because they're out in the fields. Often they were harvesting food for for the masters, but they also had those vegetables right up from the ground. They had greens. When you think of scraps from vegetables, it's a different kind of scenario there, right? Because
Yeah.
you either have the vegetables or you don't. So you have produce. Back at the time, there was a significant amount of consumption of produce that might have counterbalanced the fatty meat and things like that. And there wasn't a lot of deep frying going on. There wasn't a lot of ultra processed food, right? There,
Right.
there wasn't a lot of, and yet there was a lot of spirituality, which I think in a lot of our communities we're lacking now, especially with the young people. And that's a whole nother. One day maybe we can spend a segment on that, just how spirituality connects with good health. But I think it's an important cog in that wheel because we've talked about how chronic stress is that unique factor, the stress of the microaggressions, and not so micro. It's not so much micro now, right? With what's going on in this country right now,
Yeah.
we're back into getting into Jim Crow and not having voting rights and things like that. Well, that affects our health. That's major. Those are major stress factors for us that come out in policies that work against African Americans. So when you put this into more context of physiology, we know that this stress, these kinds of stresses, actually impact our health. They raise the inflammatory markers. They affect our gut microbiome. They affect how we think. It causes some brain inflammation. But why didn't we succumb back in the slavery time? Well, I think spirituality had a lot to do with that, as well as the physicality. You didn't have obesity on the in the plantations, and
Right.
so the fact that we didn't have obesity, the fact that we were very physically active despite the tremendous stress, the fact that we were very spiritual and connected people, I think is what allowed us, what led to us surviving. And now some of those things, even though we don't have chattel slavery now, we have a different kind of slavery that involves our minds and our thinking and our education and the fact that we are making poor food choices and in some cases don't have great choices in terms of the quality of food if we decide to eat healthy. So I just wanted to make that comment because I think inherent in this process of moving forward is the spirituality connection. Spiritual connectivity helps us to manage stress, to mitigate stress. And so, yes, we do need to make healthier choices. Yes, we do need to address a lot of these measures, these issues we're talking about. But I think a foundation of that is spiritual connectivity.
That's awesome. I think also the people that survived slavery through extraordinary resilience, community support, cultural preservation, rather, resistance, faith, and unwavering determination to live despite the brutal conditions. Enslaved people formed families. We formed communities whenever possible, and that's kind of, you can see some of that. Like when I was but week before last in Leimert Park, and everybody got along. It was people from all, and I'm talking about again black people, because it's something that's really special about when we're talking about forming of families and communities. And it's really when it comes down to it, it's like Dr. James said, a lot of times enslaved people didn't have all these choices, like where do you go when you're taken from your country, out of your village, away from your tribe, and you come to a strange place where you're treated like I don't even want to say dogs, because you got dogs walking around in leather jackets today. But I mean, they treated you like you're worthless, and all other things that went with that. I won't spoil your Saturday morning with those things, but they're definitely enslaved people form these families and these communities whenever possible, because we sat down with the elders, we shared knowledge and we shared skills, we cared for one another and passed down tradition like music. When the sisters out there dancing to the Congo beats, or you got brothers that are playing the djembes, and all of that is a part of our culture. So that traditional music, and you have some people, and I don't want to hear that stuff, but those are the people that have been really spoiled by what we've evolved to, and don't have any respect for those things that allowed us to get where we are, today. But the point of I love the point that you made, Dr. James, on the spiritual connection, spiritual beliefs that just help preserve our humanity. And that's like when we are so stressed out, or we had no talk therapy, or nobody knew anything about these different diseases, these cognitive um, problems that we didn't know they even existed. Survival was not passive, and enslaved people actually resisted to, or in countless ways, from just preserving their languages and cultural practices, to slowing the work and escaping organizing rebellions. The uh, Harriet Tubman, for instance, would be one of those, as far as organizing rebellions. And then there were a lot of rebellions that we still don't know about, because what they did is they drowned out the entire town. We have cities, you can take your time when you have time, and you should pursue this. There are cities that are underwater, that we don't even know about. These are cities that we don't even talk about. When we get what they've given us, this watered down idea of black history, for instance. And what I mean by that is that you have Martin Luther King. All of these brothers and sisters I respect, and definitely respect highly. But what happened, like Martin Luther King, we got Rosa Parks, we got Martin Luther King, we got Rosa Parks, we got Martin Luther King, we got Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Booker T. Washington, and the same people, we stay there. John Lewis, which is was my favorite. He just died not too long ago. But again, this brother was powerful. I remember he used to sit in Congress and he would say some of the most profound things, and they would do everything they could to subdue, or to block, or to reduce the power of what he said. I don't know if you all look at the check out what's happening in Congress, and the what's that station that usually, um, there's a station that usually shows the political, as they do number.
C-SPAN.
There you go. Good. Yeah, thank you very much. C-SPAN. And I remember when I first saw him, and for those of you that haven't seen the Honorable John Lewis, he was very close to Dr. Martin Luther King. As a matter of fact, they spoke with the same, rhythm and power and passion. And I was fortunate enough. This is only a couple of years ago, and he died. But it was such a great opportunity to listen to this brother talk, and he would say things. I think he outgrew the Congress, as far as moving people, as from that spiritual boost. But he was one fantastic brother. Uh, so what I want to do here, Kara, you're up now, so we wait on Kara. Here she comes.
There it is. I'm sorry. It's a little glitchy going on here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but I'm fighting with it.
Don't worry about it. Bring on the glitch.
No problem. There it is. All
There it
right.
is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, we are in the Mind of Nature, hosted by Dr. Zarif, the nutritionist, and we have Dr. James here this morning with us. This is a pre-recording. Just wanted to remind anyone that's coming in and dropping comments, but just understand that Dr. Zarif and I will be in the comments to answer any questions that you may have. Something that you mentioned, Dr. James said it, and also Dr. Zarif, when you mentioned choices. It reminded me of a sign that my mom used to have in the kitchen, like over the table, and it says, "You have two choices for dinner: take it or leave it." So that it reminded me of that, and so but yes, the choices that we have and that we make, it's a lot different now than it was before. Before, you almost would say that you didn't have a choice. It's just whatever was there is what you would have to eat for survival. But now we do have that choice, and so we tend to kind of still lean towards the side of struggling or making other choices. So that's my thought on that.
That's cool. How we looking with any? We have. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to get back into recording mode. But yeah, if for those of you that have those questions, talk to us. We love to hear. We'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to say. I think survival has so much to do with the choices that we make today. Today we are aware of those choices, and today we do step forward and we stand up and we stand out. There's a lot of things we still the things that we were fighting back in the 60s are the very things that we are fighting today. Same stuff, same stuff. Some of the language is even the same. It's the same stuff. I remember like things do change since this evolution. I remember Stokely Carmichael, and it was another Stokely Carmichael changed his name, but
Kwame Ture.
Kwame Ture. Thank you, brother. And Kwame Ture, he was saying, I heard him in Inglewood, Inglewood in California, and one of the things that he said is there's no excuse for not seeing the damage that where we live and how we act where we live, our behavior where we live. But he said it may seem that there's no explanation for it. But he said, look at in the 4 mile radius that we have in Southern California, or South LA as it's called. There is a sector of a lot of that community is all black, and he was saying that in that community, which is a 4 mile radius, that there's over 6,000 churches in that in the so-called like in places like Wilmington and Compton, places that we be, yay, that's my neighborhood, or that's my area in which I live in. But it's really getting take time to look at some of the things that we talk about, and some of those things that you even hear or you study on your own, and help to make better decisions. I know I'm caught on that. Decisions now is a super important thing. Remember that survival came at an enormous cost. And that's what we need to keep in mind. It wasn't just something that we just television makes slavery look like a rest period in elementary school. It's not even close to it. Again, get back to knowing and being aware of the millions that have suffered violence, family separation, exploitation, and the loss of freedom altogether. In fact, there are so many that endured and continue to build these communities, these cultures and institutions after emancipation, is one of the most remarkable stories of resilience in history. But what happens is that you have people that have come along, like these racist people that we have today. I'll reserve my bad title for them, but there are some people that are actually that want to shoot down what we've done and what we've accomplished. Those things are very important. So if you're not, if you one of those people that say, I don't vote, it ain't gonna work anyway, and all those that kind of stuff, change your attitude because they do make a difference. Power is in the people, and even if people don't move on the power, the size, the quantity, the many people that keep saying, we don't like it. No, we don't like it. It's unfair. We don't like it. It's unfair. No, we're not going to allow that to happen. And even sometimes is at the price of losing life. But we must continue to move forward because in moving forward and moving upward that is what really gives us as a we rather as a people to move and make progress. Many communities use royal language to inspire young people to value education, discipline, and personal growth. The African uh, um, where am I? Where am I? Oh yeah, the historical monuments demonstrate the sophisticated engineering and the artistic achievement, and these accomplishments reinforce the image of strong civilizations. In strong civilizations, I know there's been, many strong civilizations, but they didn't have the choices that we have today. We have absolutely no choices. Now, there are people that want us to kind of slide back and they want to just want us to put up with stuff that they've been lying about and they've been propagating for years. And they pretend they give you that big smile and that kind of um, those kinds of behaviors that are acceptable, but many times and most of the times you're dealing with lies that people are telling. So when it comes to food, there's no difference. It's the same thing. The Again, the things that we see, the things that we eat, the things that we smell and feel, and all this. These are a result of uh, um, the, shall I say, the media. A lot of times, we don't know. We're eating things like we were talking earlier about the. I think Carolyn was brought up about the burgers and McDonald's and sweet tea at McDonald's. McDonald's was set up for the purpose of poor people, and you will see people drive up in a Bugatti, which is that's those $1 million cars, and they'll end up, getting a burger. Even Trump with his uh, um, subhuman behind, be cool. I just don't. This is a person that I don't like. I think most people. Um, Resonate with him that are those that are very racist, but we are stepping up. And you can tell for those of us that don't vote how important it is. You ain't got to know all of the legalese and all the different terms from Washington. You don't have to be without error. I make mistakes all the time, but I move on. I don't get caught up in, oh, that's a mistake, or sometimes I'm looking right at a word and don't know it, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I did earlier with architecture. But these are things that happens that you just have to treat or teach yourself how to keep going, how to improve. Knowing that again, nutrition doesn't work by itself, although we're talking about that, but we're talking about nutrition and the also the behavior of survival. That's a whole different thing. People that are in a survival state, they think that they have to eat everything. And again, the more soul food that you eat don't make you no blacker than you were before you were eating it. So this stuff that we throw in our bodies and stuff, it's time to change. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. James. You're going to add to it, and then we're going to move on.
All right, I'll just take off from where you left off. That soul food.
Oh, great.
That soul food diet, that term can be interchanged with the Southern diet, which often means you're eating a lot of fried foods, foods that have a lot of salt, oil, sugar, those sweet potatoes that we taint with a boatload of sugar to make them even sweeter than they need to be.
Yeah.
That makes us unhealthy. The oils, the fatty meats that we put in and taints the greens that we eat. So it's if we really extract some of those disqualifiers like the oil and the salt, and the sugar, we really have a healthy food when it comes to the vegetables that we eat and the fruit that we eat, instead of making a dessert out of it by adding, a lot of dairy and other saturated fats and things like that. If we ate these foods that were more simple from the ground, that were more whole, we'd be so much more healthier. And it can counterbalance some of the not so healthy food we eat. Dr. Michael Greger has noted studies where when people eat a hamburger with avocado on it, the inflammatory markers are significantly reduced. They aren't as reduced as if you ate a burger made from black beans, but still, you move the needle. So there is a counterbalance when you eat healthy. We've seen this with broccoli too, and some people that are smokers. We know that smoking causes a host of more medical problems for you, not the least of which is heart problems and problems with the cardiovascular. But smokers that eat servings of broccoli most days of the week actually have less inflammation, less risk of cancer than those who don't. So the best thing, of course, is not to smoke at all. But the point I'm making is some of the things that we may have trouble as we move on the journey of better health, that we may have trouble with, can be counterbalanced by just simply adding more healthy foods. And so I think that if we say that this journey that is not overnight, but this long journey we want to take to better health includes adding versus focusing on what we have to subtract, we can definitely make progress. And progress, as many times said by Dr. Zarif, it's progress is over perfection. We need to just continue to make progress. I want to pivot a little bit because we know we are rapidly approaching Juneteenth, and Dr. Zarif, you've already brought up the importance of history, knowing our history. I want to point out that although Juneteenth certainly is a flexion point in history for us in terms of being freed from slavery and having a delayed knowledge of it in terms of what Juneteenth represents, I wanted to make a point that our slavery goes way, way, way back before, our history goes way back before slavery. And, as touched on already with the civilizations in Africa and the kings and queens in Africa. And at that time, we did eat healthier. And it's important to note that those are periods of time we did thrive. There was Imhotep, who, as you mentioned, engineering, and he was a person that had multiple professions. He was considered a physician. He was someone that helped to design, and he was an architect for some of the pyramids. I mean, you should really read up on Imhotep. But this historical perspective is important because when we look at African Americans, when they go from Africa to the Caribbean to the United States, in certain specific situations, you can see a progression of disease. Like if you look at blood pressure, hypertension wasn't a problem in the rural areas of Africa, in West Africa. Hypertension, which is increased blood pressure, dangerous often to the point where it can shorten your life, that was something that progressively increased when you go to the Caribbean, which many of our ancestors, they ended up in the Caribbean instead of the U.S. But then you go further from the Caribbean to the U.S., you had a greater increase in blood pressure. Another example is looking at something much talked about now, infant mortality, which is still 2 to 3 times higher in African Americans than in whites. And you ask, well, why is that? Well, in West Africa they didn't have low birth weight and infant and maternal mortality that we see here. But if you take an African American, even in the recent decades from Africa to America, within one generation, you see that impact of higher infant mortality, higher maternal mortality, higher adolescent disease and obesity. So that just speaks towards the environmental influence of America and Westernization on African Americans. And the genetic part of that may be that there may be some genes we have that make us a little more vulnerable to certain things, maybe to sodium, to inactivity. Who knows? But those genes can be managed. Those genes can be influenced by our behaviors, by us being educated about making better choices in what we do, how we spend our time, and the way and how much sleep we get, social connections, spiritual connections, things like that.
Excellent. Wow. Man, you on fire. That was beautiful. I want to go back to what you were saying, Dr. James, when it comes to smoking, because a lot of people actually think now, especially with all of these different dispensaries now that they have around the cities with marijuana. One thing about when it comes down to smoking. This is something that was a great point that you made, because that is definitely one of the things that increases the risk of disease. I mean, there's proof and there's evidence, and they do everything that they can to keep on adding to that smoking experience, including vaping and all of the other different types of flavors and the flavored cigarettes and so forth. You have it's really important that the smoking, we need to talk about how it affects all your organs. It can affect all of your organs, every organ in the body, and it's one of the leading preventable causes of disease and premature death. I just really want to make that clear to you guys. Some of the most common problems associated with smoking, and remember, I'm saying smoking. I'm not saying cigarette smoking. I'm saying smoking. Your body breaks down when you inhale smoke. Okay, that's an easy way to remember it. Smoke, even incense smoke. If you burn some leaves in the backyard, I don't think they allow that anymore, but that's smoke. Grill smoke. If you're around and you're doing the grill thing, the smoke is not meant to go into your lungs. You become the filter if you don't have any filters, or if it's not outside and the smoke is flowing away from you. Some of the things like lung cancer, the lung disease, and when I say that, the smoking damages the lungs and increases the risk of chronic bronchitis, emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, cancer. Where cancer, you've heard that. If you get a chance, look up Sammy Davis Jr. With his last message on smoking. He made this. He made the clip before he died, and what he was saying there in the clip, he said, "By the time you see this, I will be dead." And the reason that I had cancer was because of my smoking. And he went on to ask people, or to make them more aware of the harms or the risk, the major risk factor of lung cancer. And not only just lung cancer, but cancers of the mouth, the throat, the esophagus, the pancreas, the bladder, the kidney, and several other um, um, organs. This is no joke. When it comes to smoking, again, your heart and your blood vessels diseases, weakening of the immune system, poor sleep and fatigue, oral health problems, and premature aging. Yeah, it makes you look older before you get there. You see, so it makes a big difference. You know, if you've seen, I remember seeing a young lady that used to be on the modern dance in the modern dance club at. I went to Martin Luther King High in Detroit, and I remember her dancing and how beautiful she was. And I was like, God, that girl is beautiful. You know, like any other teenager. And then later I saw her, and she was smoking, and she was really, she looked much older. Remember that Dr. James, what's the sister's name that used to? Oh, Carrie, you might remember too. They played in Fame. She was, what was her name? The one that was the star of Fame. I know Debbie Allen was in it, but it was another. She used to sing, light skin, curly hair.
You got me.
Okay.
I'm visualizing her, but yeah,
Uh huh.
I'm blanking on her name too.
Well, I met her, and she was like a chain smoker. And I mean, other people, you know, like maybe I shouldn't say the names, but there's a list of people, and they are actors, and they're also, I know, some incredible vocalists, and they smoke. You see, like, remember Bruno Mars and when the other brother, the drummer, yeah, Anderson .Paak. You know, remember they were getting the awards and they were on stage smoking. I don't know if you all remember that when they were saying that they don't. They said they were getting so many awards. No, we're gonna leave some for somebody else. They were joking, and they had their cigarettes. And I was like, how in the world? Bruno Mars is one of the coldest. This guy, I mean, he looks like. I mean, he sounds so beautiful when he sings, but he's a chain smoker. And you have other people also that do that that change their style. I remember the first time I saw Dionne Warwick and she was just smoking. So don't do that to yourselves. You know, it's like you have all this. If you see up here, like one of the things that if Malcolm X, if he was still living today, last month he just turned, I believe it was on was it May the 19th, I believe it was. He turned 100 and he would have been 101 years old today. And the way that he ate, he probably could have. And you have other people that were just incredible. And but the ones that smoked and the ones that had these, abundance of drugs, overdosing, and all the other stuff that comes with that lifestyle. This is the opportunity to start today. You don't have to wait until tomorrow or the next day. Okay,
That
so
was Irene Cara. Irene Cara.
that's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. I had to look it up, but
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that's her. I knew it was like that. She was. Remember back in that day, it was a ooh. Guys used to say, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's the one for me." But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
We don't say that now, is
yeah, right.
it?
Yeah,
Not when we're married, right?
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. We got the real queens.
That's right.
Um, so we have like other people, these people, that why it's again so important to make better food choices. You have all kinds of people that have been incredible to our culture. And again, they have, here's a picture of John Lewis in the background, blurred, but with Barack Obama. These guys, you really don't understand how powerful these guys is until people take more attention, and they make a highlight film or put together their story. Because other than that, a lot of people are just entertainment. But it's just like our show. We're bringing you the information that can help you get off to a powerful start. and we want you to be successful, not for our entertainment, but for better life, for the reduction of all the risk that people take, the different health risks that people take, and do the things that will keep you healthiest. I believe one of the Williams sisters, Venus, or was it Serena? She went back. She started playing tennis. She came out of retirement. Did y'all know about that?
Serena.
Yes, yes.
Yes, that is cold. But that's we're something else. This is the one that had a child. She retired. She beat everybody, and she's coming back. That still have some fun. That's called taking care of your body. You know, taking care and being in the right state of mind is so important. Lastly, I wanted to just add this to it, and then we'll put it on the floor for any feedback. But it's really important that you again those four vital things that you can do, and that is nutrition, choosing the best and the most healthiest food for you. Don't get caught up in these things. You're too old to be too old, meaning too wise. You should be wise to exercise some of the things that will make you healthier, like better nutrition and better exercise, moving about, and they can be simple, but do something. Anything beats a zero. Then we have the sleep, making sure that you get plenty of rest, and remember things that will, all the things that even that can help you to digest foods, like the different types of acids, the different types of digestive enzymes. Some people have propagated the eating style that doesn't include drinking anything while you're eating. They've said very clearly that if you drink water while you're eating, you're going to dilute the enzymes. Guess what? Our body is ready for that. Our body takes care of that. Our body does not allow the water that we're drinking to dilute the enzymes. Now, there it can probably take the sizzle out of your throat if something is real strong, but the human body is super intelligent, way more intelligent than we really think that it is. So make sure that you don't abuse the information. Some people that are putting the misinformation out there, I'm sure that it was good intent, but your human body is incredible. That's why you can drink apple, or let's even better yet, let's go straight to bromelain, and that is pineapple juice, which is one of my favorite. When you make your pineapple juice and you let that pineapple juice chill for you in the refrigerator and then drink it, is absolutely wonderful. You can sip that with a little ginger in it, which is antispasmodic, and this will give you also a little help to move the food down if we usually eat way too fast. So the bromelain and the other enzymes will help to break the food down. When food is broken down to chemicals. You have there's a commercial on now that says, don't eat this, because what they didn't tell you is that this breaks down the chemicals. Ladies and gentlemen, everything is a chemical. You are a chemical. You are made up of chemicals. Plants are chemicals. When things break down, these are things that this that's what digestion is about. It is about breaking those things down so the body can extrapolate, and then it can allocate, and then therefore you have it in your blood system. It affects a lot of the areas of the physiology, which is the study of the function of things. Functionally, you will definitely increase your let's look at it the other way. Let's reduce the risk of infection and disease and illness. It's so beautiful. Eating, continue to enjoy it. It's supposed to be enjoyed. You're supposed to be laughing at the table, sharing stories, sharing company, and so forth. But don't get lax with a food truck. Don't get lax with that eating from these fast food restaurants, because when you do, you may just regret it. Okay, y'all can take it from there.
Well, all great advice, Dr. Z. I couldn't agree more. Um, I want to get one more thing out that's stuck in my mind from earlier, something that Carolyn had mentioned
Mhm.
about sweet tea, whether you're driving a BMW or a junk car, you many people love to drive in there, get their fast food, and get that sweet tea. I don't think my wife can hear me. That used to be my wife's favorite beverage. Anyway, but I want people to realize, we were talking about choices, and if you get that large sweet tea, that's about 30 ounces,
Mhm.
even the medium. But with the 30 ounces, you realize you are getting what's equivalent to about 10 teaspoons of sugar. 10, because there are about 40 grams of sugar in a large sweet tea, and there's 4 grams per teaspoon. I'm sorry, 4 grams of sugar per teaspoon. So you're talking about 40 grams. You're talking about 40 grams of sugar, and that's a lot of sugar, folks. And then that's just the beverage. Now, when you add that fat burger and those salty, fatty fries, well, you know what the body does with that? It actually burns the sugar and it stores the fat.
Mm.
And so if you ever wonder why, okay, even though I'm eating healthy, eating some veggies and all that, but you're getting that sweet tea and eating those fries, you cannot win. You will gain 4 or 5 pounds per month.
Yeah.
so people need to realize that when it comes down to those choices, and you have the knowledge now, you've heard it, you need to make the better choices. Dr. Z, you mentioned water with your meal. By gosh, that's the best beverage you can drink.
That's right.
Water. Next to that might be, some green tea without the sugar. Squirt some lemon in there.
Mhm.
But yes, I just wanted to make that point.
Well, I'm gonna make it with you. That's really, because that's another important one. Smoking was, I thought you was gonna top it with that, but shoot, you top that now. And it's like when we start off, for instance, like with Coca-Cola, that 12-ounce can, that's 39 grams of sugar. You got the Coca-Cola that's a little larger, that 20-ounce bottle, that's 65 grams of sugar. And then you have the sweet tea that we're talking about here, 12 ounces, that's about 27 to 35 grams of sugar. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about a whole lot of teaspoons. Let's look at it in teaspoons. Coca-Cola, that 12 ounces I was talking about, the 39 grams equals about 10 teaspoons of sugar. The sweet tea, 30 grams of sweet tea is about 7.5 teaspoons of sugar. And Coca-Cola, that 20-ounce Coca-Cola, 65 grams, more than 16 teaspoons of sugar. And that is like that is, it's like syrup to your body. In comparison, the American Heart Association recommended daily limit for adding sugar is about 25 grams. 25 grams of sugar is about 6 teaspoons. 6 teaspoons is about, you take about six paper clips, and that's how light that is. But there also, sugar is highly addictive, and for most women, 36 grams, which is 9 teaspoons of sugar, as opposed to, if we combine this sugar for women, or women and men, it's a different, sugar acts differently on women and men, just like but practically everything else. We'll get to that later, because some people think, yeah, there are similar things, like if a woman has a heart attack, for instance, you don't get the same symptoms that a man gets when he's getting a heart attack. But that'll be something good to talk about later on. I know we stretching this bad off. This is one reason that those sugary drinks are associated with weight gain, with the insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes. It's not getting any better. Fatty liver disease and tooth decay is something that is looked over frequently. And tooth decay, when you actually drink sodas and all that on a regular basis. We did talk about Mexico City. I know you all remember that. We have people that are dying every single day in Mexico. Why? Because the one of the largest, if not the largest, Coca-Cola plant is in Mexico City, and 99% of everybody that works there are Mexicans that live in Mexico City, and they have more diabetes than any place on the planet. There's other places that die from a lot of diabetes, but nothing like we've seen in Mexico City. So, whoo, it's
Wow.
it's a lot of stuff to show you. I'm so glad that you all are listening. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you very much, Dr. James, again for being here and really sharing with us. This is really wonderful as always. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And Kara jam today. Thank you, Kara. That was awesome. Yeah. All right. That was good. And
You did a great job too, Dr. Z.
oh man, I hear you. Woo! That's right. That's it. It's really wonderful, man, to working with such beautiful people. Thank you both. And we're going to be back next week with some really good stuff. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. Spread the word, the mind of nature. We are talking about things that you can use immediately. This isn't, you don't have to wait for them to grow on you. Use them immediately. You could be saving your life. Go away from here knowing that if you haven't already, please get your annual examination. It can catch some things that maybe you don't have any information about it. It's no, you don't know. You don't have any idea. You don't get any clues. You don't get any signs. Well, and if you're asymptomatic, that might be good to you because you don't feel anything. But the thing about it is, if you cannot detect it and measure it, you cannot cure it or heal it. So you want to know as much as you can about what you have so that you can do something about it. Don't carry it into the next year and keep going on with the same sicknesses. Okay, everybody, thank you so very much. I give everybody any last hello goodbyes.
Happy
Okay.
Juneteenth, because
Yeah.
the next time we come in on Saturday, it would have been that Friday. So happy Juneteenth, everyone.
Oh yeah, that's a good one, Kara. Kara, you on fire? All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm Dr. Zarif, the nutritionist.